welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has warned that the Islamic Republic is on the verge of a full-scale confrontation with the enemy. In a statement on Wednesday, Major General Hossein Salami said the enemy has stepped into the field of confrontation. He said this makes it a decisive moment for the Islamic Revolution.
With the IRGC and because they...
Over to Russia, President Vladimir Putin said Moscow was sorry to see Iran's nuclear deal fall apart, but he stressed that Russia was not a fire brigade and to rescue everything. The statement comes as tensions escalate between Washington and Tehran since U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew last year from the Iran nuclear deal, which removed sanctions in exchange for curbs on Iran's nuclear program.
We will look at how the situation develops. Russia is not a fire brigade. We cannot save just anything, which does not fully depend on us. We have played our role. We are ready to play on this a positive role. But it does not only depend on us. It depends on all the players, including the United States, European countries, and Iran.
Anti-American Farm Bureau Federation is calling on the United States President Donald Trump to swiftly end a trade war with China. It released a letter dated Tuesday saying time is running out for many in agriculture. The statement said lost exports were exacerbating the burden of an industry already in hard times, with farms' revenues cut in half over the last 6 years on falling commodity prices and bankruptcies. According to the Farm Bureau, the trade war with China has gutted a giant market for U.S. farm exports like soybean and pork, among other products. And the U.S. President Donald Trump has declared a national emergency that bars U.S. companies from using telecommunications equipment made by firms allegedly posing a national security risk. The move was seen as paving the way for a ban on doing business with Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei. Trump's executive order does not specifically name any country or company, but U.S. officials have previously labeled Huawei as a threat. Now we talk about Venezuela. The permanent ambassador to the United Nations has addressed media at the UN headquarters to discuss the recent illegal entrance of police officers into the Venezuelan embassy in Washington. Samuel Moncada began by saying that the provisions of the Vienna Conventions are shattered in the United States' attempts to violate the integrity of Venezuela's diplomatic offices.
This type of situation should be resolved by appointing third states with protecting powers in order to maintain the integrity of the diplomatic headquarters. Article 45 of the Vienna Convention states that even in cases of severance of diplomatic relations, the receiving state shall be obliged to respect and protect the premises of the mission. This is only possible through respect for the principle of immunity. For otherwise, if a government uses its territory, paid and protected agents to occupy and violate the diplomatic offices of other governments, the provisions of the convention would be shattered, and all diplomatic offices in the world would be in danger.
Tyke Berry of the organization Code Pink, and who is representative of the Embassy's Protection Collective, also joined Ambassador Moncada and spoke about the process by which the opposition and U.S. authorities attempted to evict the collective.
The other day, they put out a so-called eviction notice with no signature, no seal, no statement of what department this came from. The municipal police, which have no authority in this matter, read out an eviction order saying some guy named Vecchio is telling us that we can't be in a building that we were invited into and have been living there for many months. We reject Vecchio. We reject his call to leave the building. We will stay there until a protective status has been made for the Venezuelan embassy, and the police stand down.
Earlier on Wednesday, Reverend Jesse Jackson joined peace activists at the Washington embassy to discourage military actions in Venezuela. The Reverend successfully delivered 4 bags of supplies to the Embassy Protection Collective despite resistance from the right-wing opposition supporters. Speaking outside the building, Jackson condemned U.S. militarism around the world.
War is expensive and war is futile. We cannot starve Venezuela to submission. We must use aggressive diplomacy, bring both sides to the table, and with the help of the United Nations, figure out a conflict resolution short of violence. Right now, we're on a dangerous course in our own hemisphere. War drums are beating, babies and borders on the U.S. side in Mexico and Texas, Yemen, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan. We must go another of our foreign policies, foreign to our values. It does not make rational sense.
Meanwhile, United States Republican Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said that there is no middle ground on climate change issues. She was responding to a report published by Reuters about the green plan of former Vice President Joe Biden. It said that Biden was working on a plan to address climate change that will appeal to both environmentalists and blue-collar voters who elected Donald Trump. A member of Biden's team advising him on climate policy said that this plan is made to find middle ground on the issue. And Colombia's President Iván Duque announced that the state will appeal the decision taken by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace that ordered the immediate release of the former FARC leader Jesus Santrich. This due to the fact that it's no closed case, and the president supported the Office of the Attorney General of Colombia that said they will appeal the order to release Santrich. The court did not find any evidence that would suggest any criminal act on his part. Santrich was facing an extradition request from United States, which accused him of drug trafficking.
Preservaré por encima de todo.
I will preserve overall the institutional strength of our country. I call on the political parties to advance in the necessary reforms that allow us to close the doors to drug trafficking, impunity, and strengthen extradition as one of the mechanisms that have proven effectiveness in the fight against transnational criminals.
And Colombia's Duque expressed indignation after court refused to extradite FARC leader Jesus Santrich after the announcement of the resignation of the general attorney.
As President of the Republic, I am, and I will always be ready to sign the extradition order of alias Jesus Santrich and any other syndicated by drug trafficking in attachment to the Constitution and the law. The genuine truth, genuine justice, the genuine reparation and the guarantee of no repetition would be put on risk in case of tolerating the criminal reincidence. Justice must always be at the service of victims and not to the victimary.
And like this, we come to a first break hearing from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. Stay with us.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. On Monday, only on Telesur.
Who's moving the chess? What interests motivate the actors behind each event?
Se despliega el tablero.
Uncritical Moves investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Military ruler on Wednesday suspended crucial talks with protesters on installing civilian rule. They instead insist that negotiations will resume only after demonstrators remove roadblocks. This comes as at least 8 people were reported wounded by gunshots when Sudanese forces used live ammunition to clear demonstrators near a sit-in, the capital. And South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has successfully appointed premiers, ministers and deputy ministers. Ramaphosa's allies were appointed in 6 of the 8 provinces where the ANC governs. The African National Congress says it is delaying the announcement of the Northwest Prime candidate to appease opposing groups in the province. On other topics, Palestinians are marking the 71st anniversary of Nakba, which means catastrophe in Arabic. It commemorates the expulsion in 1948 of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes to create the State of Israel. The expulsions were carried out by invading Zionist militias, eventually left millions of Palestinians stateless. Israel has continued to expand its occupation in the West Bank and Jerusalem, with war crimes and human rights violations making millions of Palestinian refugees unable to return home. Right now, the Great March of Return is taking place. Nearly 50 injuries have reported so far. Now we have a following report that sent us earlier our correspondent in Cairo, Egypt, Nayara Tardo. Welcome, Nayara.
Around 7,000 Palestinians are at the border in Gaza to commemorate the 71st anniversary of the Nakba. It's the Palestinian catastrophe, as it is also known, on May 15, 1948, after the State of Israel declared its existence. More than 750,000 Palestinians were forced to leave their homes and land. Today, they've called for massive demonstrations to demand that the Israeli occupation of more than 70 years comes to an end in Palestinian territories. Local media is reporting that at least 47 people have been injured as a consequence of Israeli repression. Several streets have also been shut off. Local media is also reporting that there are a number of Israeli snipers at the border in order to repress the demonstrations. We have to remember that just more than a year ago, Palestinians began the Great March of Return, and that was to demand the end of the occupation that the government of Tel Aviv maintains over Palestinian land, and that refugees expelled in 1948 can in fact return to their land and homes.
Thank you, Nayara. Now we go to Malawi, where the president, Peter Mutharika, has dissolved the cabinet ahead of presidential and parliamentary elections next week. The move is in line with the country's constitution that requires the cabinet to disband it ahead of the polls. The country will, for the first time, use the electronic voting system during the May 21st elections. Mutharika is facing two main opponents, his former Vice President Saulos Chilima and former Health Minister Atupele Mulusi. And Muslim communities in Ibo Island in Mozambique are struggling to observe the holy month of Ramadan in the aftermath of Cyclone Kenneth. The popular tourist destination has gone without large-scale food aid since the cyclone struck. About 7,000 people were trapped until World Food Program helicopters reached the island last Wednesday. People have fled the village either to shelter or a relative's home.
Very few people are attending prayers because they cannot go, as mosques were destroyed. As Muslims, we observe Ramadan, but there is no food to eat, and people are out and about. On Friday, there was no one because there is no wall at the mosque.
And now we go to the Caribbean. Discussions between government and teachers in Barbados on the issue of school violence are to take place on Wednesday. The meeting was called by the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union, whose members has previously met to discuss the issue on student and teacher violence. Over 5 incidents of violence towards teachers have been recorded so far for the year. One of the most recent incidents which reached the magistrate's court involved a 14-year-old pupil who attacked a teacher over a cell phone battery. And 3 cabinet ministers in Guyana who resigned last month in accordance with a court ruling on their dual citizenship have been appointed to newly created positions within the ministries. The issue arose after last December's no-confidence vote against the government. The government appealed the vote, arguing that one of their members of parliament who voted with the position was illegal as he had dual citizenship with Canada. The High Court ruled that he breached the Constitution, and the Court of Appeal upheld the ruling. Time for a second and very short break hearing from the South. Stay tuned.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
And now we go to Brazil, where students and teachers are on strike in defense of education. It is already being called the biggest protest so far against the government of Jair Bolsonaro. Across the country, demonstrators are holding marches, events, and occupying universities. They are rejecting the announcement of a 30% cut to public education budget. The government says the measures are necessary and called Brazil's higher education sector a mess. The cuts could force the closure of dozens of teaching institutions across the country due to a lack of funds for basic necessities, including water and electricity. To have more details about this protest, we have the following report that sent us earlier our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Mir. Welcome, Brian.
I'm standing on the plaza behind the Mas Art Museum in downtown Sao Paulo off of Paulista Avenue, where shortly what promises to be the largest protest since far-right President Jair Bolsonaro took office in January is about to kick off. Protests have started up across the country early this morning as students and teachers declared a general strike today against Bolsonaro's ultra-neoliberal cuts to the public education system, which are promising to kill academic research, to kill graduate scholarships, and to create 30% across-the-board cuts. These cuts are all completely unnecessary. Brazil has $360 billion in foreign reserves. It has $1 trillion in national reserves. There's no justification for these cuts except for the ideological factor. Bolsonaro is against higher learning. He doesn't want people to be intelligent, because if they get too smart, it's going to kill his base, a base of people with neo-fascist tendencies who believe in all of the fake news that him and his followers spread across Brazil. So the protests are about to get started, and it appears to be what's already promised to be a great day for the resistance against Bolsonaro here in Brazil.
Thank you, Brian. And members of the Guarani indigenous communities in Ecuador have protested in Quito to demand that their rights be respected. Last month, a court ruled that the state violated the rights of indigenous communities because they weren't consulted about oil exploitation in their territories. But now, members of the Guarani indigenous community which lives in the Amazon rainforest are afraid of the ruling might be overturned.
We, the women of Pastaza community, come to speak in favor of our right to life. We want to have clean water, clean forest, our living culture. We want to live happily in free space and without pollution. The grandparents, the ancestors of our culture, were defenders, jungle caretakers, and did not allow anyone to enter from any culture. They killed them with spears. We do not want to face the government to kill with spears, to threaten. We just come with a lot of respect to ask you to respect our rights. It is the only thing we come to say with all our heart, with all our soul, to respect our decisions and our lives.
An oversight committee of Ecuador's National Assembly has recommended that the former Foreign Minister Maria Fernanda Espinosa, face a vote of political censure by the full Assembly. Espinosa, who currently serves as President of the United Nations General Assembly, is accused of meddling with the naturalization process of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in 2017. She is also accused of mishandling the situation of Ecuadorians living in Venezuela and the case of the murdered journalist in northern Ecuador.
Therefore, resolution
And an Ecuadorian court has set a bail hearing for Swedish software developer Ola Vini. The details in the following story of our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera.
Swedish digital activist Ola Vini is facing accusations by Ecuador's Attorney General for the crime of attacks against information systems. Recently, an Ecuadorian court ratified the preventive prison for Ola and rejected the substitute measures requested by his legal defense. This decision has been questioned by several organizations.
We are in favor of due process. Within this case, we think that the evidence presented by the police in a tweet, which was deleted, are absurd. There's no evidence for preventive prison. It affects not only to developers of free software or digital activists, but also for anyone with books, computers, and USBs being used as criminal evidence. We don't have much information in this case. This appears to be a case in which much information and evidence is missing.
Experts in defense of the use of free software and privacy have expressed that the prosecutor's decision has no support. They say that up until now there's been no word on which government systems were allegedly attacked by Ola. They also said that it is contradictory that a person like Ola, who defends privacy, will be accused of attacking information.
We don't develop software in order to steal information, or much less for hacking. There is a strong culture of hackers, sure, but it's not how people imagine it. They are not computer pirates, they are people who find disruptive solutions to existing problems.
Ola's legal defense team has confirmed that the bail hearing will be held on May 22. The attorney Carlos Soria stressed that Ecuadorian justice won't find a legal basis to deny the bail and release Ola.
The most concerning thing in the judge's decision was that if Ola is released accepting our petition, he could disappear or cause damage to the evidence for the investigation. And I ask myself, how could he destroy evidence when they already have all the evidence? There is no way. That is the level of judges we have now.
His legal defense team also pointed out that the government has said that they will ask for international help from the United States, Spain and Israel to analyze details of Ola Bini's life, both personally and professionally.
And like this, we come to the end of this brief, but you can find this and much more information on our website, treasurenglish.net, where of course you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and find much more material that we produce especially for you. Continue with Telesur, connecting the global south. Until next time, thank you for watching.